Hi, it's Bob Huebscher, and this is the Gaining Perspective podcast, where we bring you insightful conversations with some of the top thought leaders in the investment advisor profession and investment management industry. I am the founder of Advisor Perspectives and a vice chairman of Vetify. Are you curious about what a transition in the digital age truly entails? My guest, Lizzie Warner, and I will step inside the world of broker dealer RIA transitions and unveil the timeline and milestones of those transformations. We want this to be your gateway to making your move smoother and more accessible than ever before. Lizzie is Vice President of Transition and Strategic Acquisitions at Cambridge, and she will share her insights and stories from guiding countless financial advisors through this pivotal change. And she'll also introduce Cambridge's complimentary resource, Asking the Right Questions of Your Next Transition Team. So, Lizzie, let's start off by having you tell me about your career path, what led you to Cambridge, and your role there.
Yes, thank you for having me today. Cambridge is located in my hometown, and I knew that I wanted to plant my roots in the community that had raised me. I had graduated with a business degree, and I really didn't know what I wanted to do long term, and I had a family friend recommend Cambridge. Fast forward to where I'm at today. I've been in the industry for over 15 years, and I've had the pleasure of serving many different roles here at Cambridge. It really didn't take me long to fall in love with this industry. I started in our operations department where I really started to learn the industry from the ground up. At that time, once I had spent 8 years in operations, I was offered an opportunity by our CEO at that time, Amy Weber, to learn more about the advisory side of the business. I had led Cambridge's advisory compliance department with our CCO. And I really enjoyed compliance and all the facets of the RIA. It was honestly very intriguing to me to see that side of the business. All of these prior experiences led me to where I'm at today, which is overseeing the transition department here at Cambridge.
And we should clarify that your hometown is not Cambridge, Massachusetts, which is near where I live. I believe you're based in Iowa, in Fairfield, Iowa.
That is correct.
Okay, good. So, how have transitions evolved in the last 5 years?
Over the last 5 years, I see advisors taking advantage of technology to transition their book of business faster. The days of physical paper to transition a book of business are honestly long gone.
What are some of the significant developments that you've seen that advisors should be aware of?
Yeah, so connecting to what I had mentioned previously, advisors really should be aware of the technology advancements firms are making to enhance the onboarding experience, to cut down on the time it takes to transition a book of business. Here at Cambridge, we hired a third party technology provider to assist advisors with the paperwork. Paperwork seems to be the task that takes the most time. And with this technology, e-signature is available and something advisors should look at when they're considering to make a move. The use of e-signature will significantly cut down the time it takes to transition.
Can you share any stories where a financial advisor was positively surprised by some aspect of their transition journey?
Yeah, it's hard for me to pick one, but I'll share one that I have top of mind. We had a fairly large office join us and they transitioned very quickly. They had their transition launch call, which is a call that we do to kick off the transition, and they joined Cambridge within 24 days. They knew going into that transition that they really didn't have a ton of time to prepare. But what they did is they appointed someone in their office solely focused on the transition, and she ultimately kept everyone on track. The trust that this office had in this single person was impressive to me and was quite honestly, it was fun to watch. This firm, when they joined us, they had transferred 60% of their assets within 30 days, and they hit 90% within days thereafter. In working with this office, they knew that they were organized and that they would transfer their accounts quickly, but I just don't think they realized how quickly it would have been done. And this is why I cannot stress enough to have someone in charge of the transition when you're going through one. And that person's responsibility is to hold everyone accountable to meeting the milestones needed to make a smooth transition.
24 days seems awfully impressive, very fast. Is that typical for the duration of transitions? And what are some of the key phases that you're seeing in today's digital age?
Yeah, great question. So we break transitions down into three phases. And the first phase is when the advisor is working with the recruiter to determine if the firm is the right fit. Once the advisor has determined that the firm is the right fit, they will then enter what we call the pre transition phase, where they focus on completing the steps necessary to plan for the transition. The goal of this phase is to make sure that the advisors are ready to go once they submit their resignation letter. We call it the sweet spot for the pre-transition phase is generally 4 to 6 weeks of prep work prior to joining the new firm. The last phase that we have is what we call post-transition, where the advisor is finally registered with their new firm, accounts are transferring, and advisors are learning the new ropes of the new firm. This phase typically is completed within 60 days. So, as I had mentioned, those asset stats previously, the transition that I had talked about in the example, they move very, very quickly. And a lot of that has to do with the prep work that we talked about within those 24 days.
This sounds very systematic. You've obviously been through this many times, but what are some of the obstacles that you've seen that tend to slow down the process? And what do you do to avoid them?
Yeah, a couple obstacles I commonly see are postponing the prep work needed to be done for the day the advisor joins the new firm and following a transition plan. Going into a transition, advisors need to have a plan on how they are going to execute the transition and need to make sure they stay on track so the tasks do not become a rush at the end. The last thing you want is you're getting ready to join your new firm and you have some fire drills because maybe the prep work just wasn't done the way that it needed to be. So, really focusing on and building a transition plan will help you avoid those common obstacles that we see.
What does the broker dealer RIA or its branch office support offer financial advisors during their transition?
Yeah, so I kind of alluded to it previously in that successful transition that I talked about is these firms, how they can support the financial advisors is to appoint someone on their team who is a transition expert, who knows the ins and outs of transitions. This person acts as a guide for the advisor. They're there to answer their questions. They build their transition plan on how they are going to execute the transition with the advisor. They will assign those milestones that need to be hit to ensure all parties are executing the transition plan as expected. This person also needs to keep a pulse on the transition. It is a very, very stressful time, and we certainly understand that. And what this person needs to do is to be able to alleviate the stress that may be coming and doing their best to avoid those situations.
What does your team do to help keep these transitions moving smoothly and not losing momentum?
What my team does is they monitor all tasks associated with the transition. We will take the large plan and we will break it down into smaller chunks. That way, more so bite-sized chunks, so the advisor can understand the tasks that need to be done on a weekly basis. They're there to keep the ball rolling and ultimately reassure advisors that you will cross the finish line and it will be an amazing feeling when you get there. We like to celebrate the milestones through the transition and have fun when we can.
What do you do to ensure that a transition finishes strong?
Celebrate the wins. That's during the transition and at the very end of the transition. It's easy to get caught up in the minutia of a transition, and it's important to take the time throughout and the end of the transition to celebrate what was just accomplished. And certainly don't forget to thank the staff. They are often doing the heavy lifting and focused on the smallest details, so they need to be thanked for their hard work.
Celebrate the wins and thank the staff. Principles that I use in managing my business. What advice would you give to an advisor who's hesitant to undergo the broker-dealer RIA transition?
Do your due diligence. As you're looking at firms to determine who is the right fit for you, ask how they are going to support you during the transition. You will need a strong team to lean on and to guide you through the transition process. Transitions are not a one size fits all. Advisors need to make sure they are joining a firm who is experienced with transitions. Also, ask for a few names of advisors who recently transitioned and ask them about their experience. It is a great opportunity to understand what your experience will be like should you choose to move forward with that firm.
I know that client retention is always the top concern among brokers that are undergoing these transitions. What are the strategies and support systems that you recommend to maximize client retention?
Yeah, this is a great question and one that is often forgotten. Advisors need to strategize how they're going to announce the change to their clients. I recommend that advisors place their clients into A, B, and C buckets. Advisors can define these buckets how they want to. For example, I see some advisors, they will break it down by assets. They might break it down by revenue or potentially the types of accounts that the clients have. The A clients should receive the most attention and should be contacted first when making a move. A phone call and written communication is recommended for your A clients. B's and C's could be done in writing shortly after you make the move. You have a little bit more time with these clients. Your firm should have sample content to announce the change, so be sure to ask for sample client letters so you don't have to reinvent the wheel. And don't forget social media. Whether that is a business or personal account, make sure to hit up social media to share with those who are active social media users that you've made a move. Advisors will retain their clients if they have a strategy in place. The last thing I'd like to mention, it is possible you have clients who are no longer a fit for you. This is a really good time to decide which clients you would like to leave behind when you make a move to the new firm.
Thank you. I mentioned in my introduction that you have a complimentary checklist. Talk about that and the other resources that you and your team offer for advisors who are thinking about this transition.
The complimentary guide that we have, it is titled Asking the Right Questions of Your Next Transition Team. This guide is tailored for financial advisors considering to make a move. This is a checklist of questions in the guide that help advisors ensure that the new firm will support them during the transition. As I mentioned previously, these are critical steps during the due diligence process and one that shouldn't be missed. We also have transition plans, sample timelines. We also have client retention letters that I mentioned previously. Cambridge has a ton of resources that advisors can use to help make a seamless transition.
If there's one key takeaway that you'd like to leave with our audience of advisors about the steps to take now to know if a transition is right for them, what would it be?
I would say start reaching out to firms if, you are thinking that you are looking to make a transition to a new firm, start reaching out to those firms, start doing your due diligence. There are many consulting firms out there that can help you with this and guide you through that process. So it never hurts to reach out and start the process.
Thank you. Well, we'll include a link to the complimentary checklist that Lizzie mentioned, asking the right questions of your next transition team. Lizzie, is there anything else you'd like to add?
I appreciate the time that you've given me today. Thank you.
You're welcome, and thank you for listening to the Gaining Perspective podcast with Bob Huebscher, today featuring Lizzie Warner of Cambridge. To support our podcast, please share, subscribe, or leave a review to help make our podcast more findable for your friends and colleagues. You can subscribe to Gaining Perspective on your favorite podcasting service.